Rolling down the boulevard in the speedboat Corvette, like a tail on a tornado ring to promise soaked in sweat. One hand on the glass pipe, the other on the wheel. Devil riding shotgun, singing, boy, let's make a deal.
This is Groundless, a Justified podcast. This is a podcast where we watch every episode of Justified and then come on here and talk about it. This is our City Primeval edition, here to talk about the first 2 episodes of City Primeval, released just this week. I'm Chris. That man is Randy.
We're not in Kentucky anymore. We're in the chocolate city of Detroit.
That's right, we are. We have a new feature this week that we'll use to talk about Detroit, because boy to boy did the show bang us over the head with that concept. We are here to discuss season 1, episodes 1 and 2 of Justified City Primeval, an episode called City Primeval and an episode called The Oklahoma Wildman. So, and so we're here to talk about this. And so our format's going to be a little bit different for the City Primeval season, since we're not really doing a analysis, sort of deep dive into the episodes. It's more of a reaction podcast, I would think, than a rewatch podcast like we do with the other Justified. So we'll just sort of dive right into the episodes here. I think that the way I've sort of structured my notes, and I don't know how you've done yours, but the way I've structured my notes is I have it sort of on a character by character basis. And okay. I thought we could talk through sort of all of the characters and what they're up to, and just sort of naturally get to some of the plot points and things like that. So, okay, I figured where better to start than with Raylan. And I don't know, my notes on Raylan here. It's 10 or 15 years later. I think they moved it to 15 years later. So I think it's quite a while after he has left Kentucky for Miami, and he's probably getting, I would guess, getting pretty close to mandatory retirement age, because if I remember correctly, U.S. Marshal mandatory retirement age is 57. I remember Art having to deal with that in the original series. So
yeah, it seems to me that I think we had talked about this, but he does look he looks older. Yeah, definitely. So they did that well, as far as like
his silver hair for sure. Definitely ages him a little bit, but he's still got a nice head of hair. He's still a good looking man, that's for sure. He's very skinny. He looks like he's like adopted a vegan lifestyle or something. I didn't.
Yeah. But I noticed it mostly in his face. Yeah, you know, like his weathered face.
Yes.
But he maybe he has adopted the vegan lifestyle this time in Miami.
Maybe that's that. I guess that Miami sun ages you, I guess, is what it is. So, although you'd think with the hat he would keep it off his face, but. So we have our inciting event here. He's with Willa, and we'll talk about Willa here in a second. And they're on their way to some sort of what I think is some sort of reform camp for wayward youth. Did you catch that?
Like military camp or something? Yeah.
They take your phone away, and they're very, very strict about the rules.
Yeah.
Because they show up late and they get rejected. Yeah. But somebody tries to carjack them, which is not the smartest thing in the world. And that's kind of our inciting event, which is what ends up with Raylan and Willa in Detroit. He's testifying at an arraignment for the person who carjacked him. And that's the whole reason that he's there. And the whole reason that he stays is because he ends up getting requested for a task force associated with the judge whose courtroom he was in. To testify. And so there's a few things that I wanted to kind of mention here. The first is, where is Raylan getting his endless supply of town cars? Like, they stopped making those in 2011.
Yeah.
And they're very hard to find. Like, ones with low miles in good shape are very difficult to find because they're unicorns, right? They were used for car services and law enforcement and other livery. And so it's hard to find good ones that are in good shape with low miles.
And it would have been like a government issued one too.
Yeah.
You know, like, so that's like like you're saying, it would be like the heavy duty use model. So it has all the modifications.
Those things are stealth muscle cars. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, you know, you can do all like, you can like bash the rear end and they would just like fix, you know, Bondo it or whatever.
Yep.
And then get it back onto the road.
So yeah,
I would have thought. Oh, I was gonna say I would have thought they would switch to him to like you know, like the Ford Explorer, like those police,
or the Charger or Challenger,
or the Charger.
Or
yeah. Nope.
Well, apparently still sponsored by Ford.
Yeah.
So I'm sure the town car guys were very interested to see kind of what vintage that one was and all of that for this this show. But
yeah.
You know, there's he gets put on the stand in the courtroom, and Carolyn Wilder is asking him some questions, and she's I think and we'll talk more about Carolyn Wilder here in a minute, but I think that her courtroom scene is actually the weakest of the scenes that she's in. Mm-hmm. I thought she was a little bit kind of annoying and weak in the courtroom scene, but pretty much every other scene I really liked. I really liked Carolyn.
Yeah. Even like I think where she was in her office, like she's calling that. I thought that was pretty decent, you know.
Yeah.
With her, and then she introduced, because you could tell that she's being pulled in a couple different directions.
Yeah, very complex character, right? We know because we see her kind of we know she's crooked, at least some sort of crooked, because she's taking money from Sweetie, and she's involved with Clement Mansell. But we also see that she's a victim in this as well. Yeah. And so it's going to be interesting to see how all of that plays out. And there's this sort of forced chemistry that she's having with Raylan, which I don't know about you. I didn't buy it. I don't know. It didn't feel convincing to me that because they're definitely setting up sort of a quasi romantic relationship between the two of them.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel very convincing. I don't know.
I think I'd like to see it like remember in A Few Good Men, where they kind of like sort of put Demi Moore's character and Tom Cruise's character in that sort of position, but they never did anything. I think that would be the play, you know.
Oh, you think so? Okay, all right, I can see that. That actually feels more. That's like sort of the Wendy Crow sort of situation from season 5, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to an Ava sort of situation, which is what this is starting to feel like, right? She's sort of a damsel. I mean, she's not your traditional damsel in distress because she's very clearly able to take care of herself. But at the same time, there's a little bit of a damsel in distress sort of thing going on here with her interactions with Clement, I think.
Yeah.
So I think when they had him on the stand, you know, and there's this great moment, you know, we're seeing Raylan being called to account for some of his more bad behavior. Yeah. And you know, again, it's 15 years later, the societal perception of police has changed. You know, even in the 8 years since Justified has aired, there's been some very significant sea changes in public opinion and polarization around police and what police do. And so it's very, I think it's very progressive of the show to put Raylan on the stand and hold him to account with a black judge and a black lawyer asking him about threatening to put a black man in the trunk of his car. I thought it was a great moment.
Yeah. Well, a good counterpoint would have been if his his testimony was, I don't just discriminate putting black people in the trunk of a car. I put everybody in the trunk of a car.
Exactly. I threatened to put everybody. I almost put Willa in the trunk if she wouldn't shut up.
That's right. So there's no discrimination here or anything that you implied.
That's the old, I don't see color. Yeah, that works every time. I do think there was a missed opportunity there for him to say, because when she asked him that, he could have very easily said it was justified, because he says, he threatened to, he was threatening me. So I felt like, it was, but he could have said it was justified, just like he did in season 1, episode 1.
Yeah.
But I do like that he's being called to account for some of his bad behavior. I also feel like, just based on sort of the interactions we saw with him with the bombing suspect and so on, and with the locals especially, that he might have mellowed a little bit in his older age.
Yeah. I think that's and you and I are not 20 somethings, and so we're older. And I think I've mellowed in my old age.
That's right. Age cools those fiery passions, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I do, let's talk about the locals for a minute, right? Because we don't get much of them in this episode. We just get them a few times. There's Norbert and Maureen. That's Marin Ireland is Maureen, and Norbert Leo Butts is Norbert. And they're involved in trying to track down the guy who blew up the judge's car.
Yeah.
And they find this, he's like a white supremacist sort of very, very Harlan feeling fellow. Like he's got the beard and he's, a redneck or whatever in Detroit.
Yeah. And there is a history of that in Michigan, as far as like these militias and white supremacists, and even back in the early, like the early 2000s, I think they were putting people on trial for that sort of thing. It's very similar to Kentucky as far as, but I mean, even the that recent plot with the governor trying to kidnap the governor.
Yeah.
Like, this happened. I think that had ties to, they tried to tie that to like these militia guys.
Yeah.
Even though it was all ended up being like Fed operation and inside the, like setup,
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
I do remember hearing about some sort of alleged militia connection or something with that. Yeah. And it didn't even occur to me as I was watching this to think, oh yeah, you know what? There is a history of that in Detroit, but you're absolutely right. Thinking back on it, I do remember. So that's very consistent with sort of a Michigan history as well. I guess since we're on that topic, let's hit one of our new features.
This is Detroit. Rock City. Detroit City.
Yes, this is Detroit, not this is Sparta. This is Detroit. And how do we know that we're in Detroit? Well, the show tells us repeatedly. Although it's interesting because the show's actually filmed in Chicago. I don't know if you knew that or not.
I thought we did know that, right? Because they were filming. Or there was that whole shootout.
The shootout,
kind of on brand.
It's very
happened on the set.
Very on brand for Chicago.
Yeah, and Detroit, I guess, for that matter. Huh?
Yeah, although we'll talk about the population decline in Detroit, and that has resulted in a corresponding decline in per capita violence. So, but there's plenty of shots in the beginning to tell us it's Detroit. We get the Ambassador Bridge. We get a bunch of other things. We get a lot of B-roll throughout the first episode, especially of urban blight. Rundown buildings, rundown homes, sparsely populated areas. Yep. We got the D-Town Casino. We've got references to Parliament Funkadelic. And Parliament Funkadelic, by the way, both Parliament and Funkadelic were originally formed in New Jersey. But when George Clinton relocated to Detroit, and he then combined it into George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic, and that became kind of the really known iteration of the band, and that became a Detroit band essentially.
Oh, that's interesting.
But yeah, we got the references to that when Sweetie was in the bar with Raylan and the local cop. My favorite though was Willa picking up a rusted Pontiac logo from the floor of like an abandoned